They say it's about fairness, about protecting people, about building a better future. But here on the left coast, it feels more like control. More taxes and more government deciding what you're allowed to say, believe, and keep. Tonight, Washington pushes a new income tax despite constitutional red flags. Seattle leaders want even more money from businesses. The Supreme Court draws a line on free speech and now calls for reparations for illegal immigrants. At what point do we say enough? From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth. Welcome back to Left Coast News, where we break down what's happening on the West Coast and what it actually means for you, your rights, and your wallet. New taxes in Seattle. Let's start in Seattle because apparently the solution to everything is still more taxes. Councilmember Kathy Moore, alongside others, is pushing new taxes targeting big business and wealthy residents. And here's the pitch: tax the rich, tax corporations, redistribute the money, fix inequality. Same playbook, different year. This is on top of the millionaire's tax just signed into law by Ferguson and all other record number of tax hikes the state just made. But here's the reality they don't talk about. Businesses don't just absorb taxes out of kindness. They pass it on to the consumers, to employees, or they leave. We've already seen companies pull out of Seattle. We've already seen prices skyrocket. And now the answer is do it again. And at some point, this stops being policy and starts looking like punishment. And if you think it won't hit middle class families, you haven't been paying attention. The Supreme Court drops the hammer on free speech. Now this one has serious constitutional weight. In Chiles versus Salazar, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled 8-1 that Colorado's ban on conversion therapy for minors violates the First Amendment. Let's strip the politics out for a second and look at what the court actually said. The government cannot regulate speech based on viewpoint. That's it. That's the core issue. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote that this law targeted conversations, speech, not conduct. And once again, the government starts deciding which conversations are allowed. You don't have free speech anymore. You have approved speech. Now here's where it hits home. Washington State has a nearly identical law, SB 5722, and it does the same thing. It bans certain conversations between therapists and minors based on consent. So what happens now? This ruling opens the door for legal challenges right here in Washington, and whether you agree with conversion therapy or not, that's not the point. The Constitution doesn't protect popular speech. It protects all speech, especially the kind the government doesn't like. The income tax showdown in Washington. Now let's talk about what might be the biggest fight coming to this state. Washington just passed a new income tax, and immediately legal action is coming. The Citizen Action Defense Fund is preparing a lawsuit led by former Attorney General Rob McKenna. And here's the argument. Under Washington's Constitution, income is considered property, and property must be taxed uniformly. You can't have a graduated income tax that's been settled law for nearly a century. This goes back to Article 7 of the state constitution. So what is the state doing? Passing a progressive income tax anyway. McKenna didn't mince words. This creates a direct conflict with constitutional protections. Translation: lawmakers are gambling that courts will let them rewrite the rules. And if they win, you're not just looking at one tax, you're looking at a permanent shift in how Washington taxes everything and everybody. Reparations for illegal immigrants. And just when you thought the tax conversation couldn't get any more surreal, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal is now calling for taxpayer-funded reparations for illegal immigrants. Her words: those responsible need to be prosecuted and there must be some form of reparation. Let that sink in. Americans are struggling with inflation, housing costs are crushing families, small businesses are barely hanging on, and the conversation is shifting toward paying people who entered the country illegally. This isn't just a policy debate anymore. This is about priorities. Who does the government serve? Because right now it doesn't look like the people footing the bill. And if you needed one more reminder that Washington is becoming one of the most expensive places to just exist, let's talk fuel. Right now, Washington is setting records for the highest diesel prices in the country. Not occasionally, not once, daily. And diesel isn't just about truckers, it's about everything: food delivery, construction, farming, shipping. If diesel goes up, everything goes up. Now, layer this on top of it. Governor Bob Ferguson signed SB 5801, increasing the state gas tax from 49.4 cents to 55.4 cents per gallon. And that's just the start. Beginning in 2026, that tax increases automatically by 2% every year. So when prices are already high, they're baked in to go higher. According to reporting from the Seattle Times, there's been no move to pause the gas tax, even as fuel costs spike and pressure builds on working families. And here's the part that should make people stop and think. These taxes are dedicated to transportation funding, which sounds responsible, until you realize there's no off switch, no relief valve, no point where the state says, hey, maybe now's not the time to squeeze people even harder. Instead, automatic increases, while Washington already sits near the top for fuel taxes nationwide. So stack it all together now. Higher business taxes, a potentially unconstitutional income tax, record fuel prices driven even higher by state policy, and leadership that won't even consider a pause. At some point, this stops being coincidence and starts looking like a pattern. So let's recap. Seattle wants more taxes. The state is pushing an income tax that may violate its own constitution. Fuel prices are breaking records while gas taxes keep climbing automatically. The Supreme Court just reinforced that speech is not something that the government gets to control, and now we're talking about reparations funded by taxpayers already stretched thin. This isn't just policy anymore. It's pressure from every direction, on your paycheck, on your rights, on your ability to just live your life without the government constantly reaching in your pocket. Thanks for watching Left Coast News. You can find us on all the social media outlets. Please like, share, and follow if you got anything out of this. Also, drop a comment below and let me know what you think of all these taxes, because I know I'm sick of it. I'm tired of paying for everybody else's stuff. And this thing that's still being pushed about illegal immigrants, and of course, it's got to be Jayapal from our state, right? We don't need to pay any reparations to illegal immigrants. We are in a terrible economy right now, and she shouldn't even be talking about taking our taxpayer money to pay for stuff like that. Ferguson should be considering a pause on the gas tax. There are several states that are doing that right now, and Washington needs to consider it as well, because we're getting hammered. Seattle wants to take more tax from businesses after they're already getting hammered by the state taxes that have been enacted over the last year. It's a bad economic outlook for this state. And yet you still see so many people in the comments of these news stories making excuses for the government, supporting these taxes for whatever reason. Apparently they don't like to keep their money, or they're not paying them anyway, so it doesn't matter. The state is full of government bootlickers is what it comes down to. But let me know what you think. See you next time.